So, let's talk about judging. It's one of those topics that comes up all the time. You hear it everywhere. Someone might say something you disagree with, and you get the classic response, "Don't judge me." Or maybe, "Only God can judge me." It's often used as a shield, a way to shut down a conversation. And for Christians, it's especially complicated, because we have this very famous verse from Jesus himself, right at the start of Matthew 7. "Judge not, that you be not judged." It seems simple enough. Case closed. Christians should not judge others. Period. But then you keep reading the Bible, and you run into other verses. Verses that seem to say the exact opposite. Paul gets angry with the church for not judging a man in their group who is living in serious sin. Jesus tells people to judge with right judgment. He tells us to beware of false prophets and that we'll know them by their fruits. How can you know a false prophet by their fruit if you're not allowed to make a judgment about them? This is a real tension. It's not a simple bumper sticker answer. It's something that requires us to look closer, to sit with the words and understand what they really mean. It's not about finding a loophole so we can feel good about pointing fingers. It's about understanding what God actually expects from us in our relationships with each other. The question isn't just a yes or no. The real question is, what does it mean to judge? And what is the heart behind it? That's what we need to figure out. Let's start right where the confusion begins. Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. This is part of the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is talking to his followers, laying out what it looks like to live as a citizen of God's kingdom. And he says this, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." And let's break that down. The first line, "judge not," is the one everyone remembers. The Greek word for judge here is krino. It can mean a lot of things. It can mean to evaluate or discern. But in this context, it carries the weight of condemnation. It's not just having an opinion. It's setting yourself up as the final authority on someone else's life. It's the kind of judgment that looks down from a great height. The kind that says, "I am right and you are wrong and I am better than you because of it." Jesus immediately gives the reason why we shouldn't do this. "For with the judgment you pronounce you will be judged." This is a terrifying thought. The very same standard you use to condemn someone else will be turned right back around on you. Not by other people, but by God. If you are harsh, merciless, and unforgiving in your judgment of others, you are basically asking God to be harsh, merciless, and unforgiving with you. It's a principle of reciprocity. What you put out into the world, you get back from God. This isn't karma, it's about the nature of God's kingdom. A kingdom of grace cannot be populated by people who refuse to give grace. Then Jesus gives us one of the most powerful images in the entire Bible, the log and the speck. It's almost comical. He asks, "Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye?" Imagine this for a second. A man is walking around with a giant wooden beam, a railroad tie, sticking out of his eye sockets. He can't see straight, he's bumping into things, he's a danger to himself and everyone around him. And he walks up to another guy and says, "Hold still, brother. You've got a little bit of sawdust in your eye. Let me get that." It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And that's the point. The log represents our own sin, our own faults, our own brokenness. And it's huge. It's blinding. The speck is the other person's fault. It's small. It's noticeable, maybe. But it's nothing compared to the giant plank we're ignoring in our own life. Jesus is saying that when we jump to judge others, we are often completely blind to our own massive problems. Our pride, our selfishness, our greed, our anger, these are logs. The little annoyance we see in someone else, their bad habit, their mistake, that's a speck. The person with the log in their eye is a hypocrite. That's the word Jesus uses. A hypocrite was originally an actor, someone playing a part, pretending to be something they're not. When we judge someone else for their speck while ignoring our own log, we are acting. We are pretending to be righteous judges, when in reality we are just as flawed, if not more so, than the person we are judging. We are putting on a performance of righteousness to mask our own deep-seated issues. But here is the most important part of the whole passage, the part that often gets skipped. Jesus doesn't say, "Don't ever help your brother with his speck." He doesn't say, "Pretend the speck isn't there." Look at what he says in verse 5. "You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." This changes everything. It's not a blanket prohibition on ever addressing sin in someone else's life. It's a command about the order of things. It's about the prerequisite for helping someone. The first step is always self-examination. Before you even think about the speck in your brother's eye, you have to deal with the log in your own. This is a painful, humbling process. It means going before God and saying, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. See if there is any grievous way in me." It means confessing your own sin, repenting, acknowledging that you are just as broken and in need of grace as anyone else. It's about getting real with yourself and with God. Only after you've done that, after you have begun the process of dealing with your own giant mess, can you move to the second step. And Jesus says, "And then you will see clearly." The log was blinding you. Your own pride and hypocrisy were distorting your vision. But once the log is removed, you can see properly. You can see the situation for what it is. You can see your brother not as a target for your criticism, but as a fellow human being who is struggling. Your vision is no longer clouded by self-righteousness. It is clarified by humility. And what is the goal of seeing clearly? To take the speck out of your brother's eye. The goal is not to punish, or to shame, or to win an argument. The goal is to help. That's to restore. To gently and lovingly help them with their struggle. The image is one of a surgeon, not a prosecutor. You are there to heal, not to condemn. So Matthew 7 is not telling us to be passive observers who never speak up about right and wrong. It's a profound warning against a specific kind of judgment, the kind that is hypocritical, self-righteous, and condemning. It's the kind of judgment that comes from a place of pride, not love. It's the judgment of a person who has forgotten their own desperate need for grace. So what does this forbidden judgment look like in real life? We can see it described in other parts of the Bible too. One type is this very hypocritical judgment we just talked about. It's judging someone for a standard that you yourself do not meet. The Apostle Paul talks about this in Romans 2. He's talking to religious people who are looking down on others for their sin. He says, "Therefore you have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges. For in passing judgment on another you condemn yourself, because you who judge practice the very same things." It's the ultimate hypocrisy. Pointing out someone's greed while you are secretly materialistic. Criticizing someone's gossip while you are slandering them to a friend. It's using God's law as a weapon against others, while ignoring how it convicts. Another type of forbidden judgment is condemnatory judgment. This is when we try to take God's place. We act as if we are the final judge of a person's soul or their eternal destiny. We write them off. We decide they are beyond hope. The book of James speaks very strongly against this. In chapter 4, it says, "Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor?" That last line is powerful. Who are you to judge your neighbor? James is reminding us of our place. We are not God. We do not have all the facts. We cannot see the heart. We do not know the future. To pronounce a final damning verdict on someone is to usurp God's authority. It is an act of incredible arrogance. Our job is to be doers of the law, which Jesus summed up as loving God and loving our neighbor. It is not our job to be the judge and jury. This leads to a third type of forbidden judgment based on external appearances. We are so quick to judge people based on what we see on the surface, how they dress, what kind of car they drive, what music they listen to, their political party, their tattoos. We create entire narratives about who a person is based on these superficial details. But God has always warned his people against this. When the prophet Samuel was looking for the next king of Israel, he was impressed by the oldest, tallest son of Jesse. But God told him, "Do not look on his appearance, or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." We can't see the heart. We don't know a person's motives. We don't know their struggles, their history, their secret pain. We don't know what's going on inside. When we judge based on externals, we are almost always wrong. Jesus touches on this in John chapter 7, verse 24, when he tells the crowd, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." This is a crucial verse. He doesn't just say don't judge. He says don't judge by the surface level stuff. Instead, use a different kind of judgment, a right judgment. Finally, there is self-righteous judgment. This is the judgment that comes from a need to feel superior. The best example of this is the parable Jesus told in Luke 18 about the Pharisee and the tax collector. They both go to the temple to pray. The Pharisee stands by himself and prays, "God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give tithes of all that I get." His prayer isn't really to God. It's a speech about how great he is. His righteousness is built on comparing himself to others, especially the sinner in the room. He needs the tax collector to be bad so that he can feel good. The tax collector, on the other hand, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Jesus says that it was the tax collector, not the Pharisee, who went home justified before God. The Pharisee's judgment of the tax collector was a symptom of his own massive pride. It was a log of self-righteousness that blinded him to his own need for mercy. So, the Bible is very clear about the kind of judgment we must avoid. Any judgment that is hypocritical, condemnatory, superficial, or self-righteous is forbidden. It comes from a sinful heart, and it damages others and ourselves. This is what Jesus is primarily warning against in Matthew 7. But this isn't the whole story. As we saw, even Jesus said to judge with right judgment. This implies that there is a kind of judgment, a kind of evaluation or discernment, that is not only allowed but necessary for a Christian. The Bible doesn't call us to turn off our brains and accept everything and everyone without question. That would be foolish and dangerous. Let's look right back at Matthew 7, just a few verses after the judge not passage. In verse 6, Jesus says, Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. This is a strong, even shocking statement. To obey this command, you have to make a judgment. You have to be able to identify who, in a certain context, is acting like a dog or a pig. This doesn't mean writing people off forever, but it does mean discerning when someone is hostile to the gospel, when they are just looking to mock and attack, and realizing that it's not wise to continue sharing sacred truths with them in that moment. That requires discernment. It requires making a judgment call. Then, a little further down in the same chapter, from verse 15 to 20, Jesus gives another command. Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. This is a direct command to evaluate teachers and leaders. He is telling us to be fruit inspectors. We are supposed to look at the results of their lives and their teachings. Do they produce love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? Or do they produce division, arrogance, greed, and abuse? To obey this command, you must make a judgment. You can't just say, well, who am I to judge if their teaching is good or bad? Jesus says that for your own spiritual safety, you have a responsibility to evaluate them, to judge their fruit. This isn't condemning their soul to hell. It's making a wise and necessary assessment to protect yourself and the church from harm. This idea of protecting the church leads to the clearest example of required judgment in the New Testament. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Paul writes to the church in Corinth, and he is furious. He has heard that there is a man in their church who is in an open, unrepentant sexual relationship with his stepmother. And the church is not doing anything about it. In fact, they are arrogant and proud of how tolerant they are. And Paul's response is shocking to our modern ears. He says, I have already pronounced judgment on the one who did such a thing. He then tells the church what they must do. They are to gather together and deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. This is what we call church discipline. Removing someone from the fellowship of the church. Then he asks them a pointed question. Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? God judges those outside. Purge the evil person from among you. Paul makes a clear distinction here. We are not to go around judging the world, the people, outside the church. That's God's job. But for those inside the church, those who claim the name of Christ, there is a responsibility to hold one another accountable. The Corinthian church thought they were being loving by tolerating this sin. Paul says they were being arrogant and unloving. Their refusal to judge was destroying the man and compromising the witness of the whole church. This kind of judgment, church discipline, is not meant to be punitive. Paul says the goal is that the man's spirit may be saved. The hope is that by being removed from the community, he will realize the seriousness of his sin, repent, and be restored. This connects back to Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, which says, Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Notice the goal restoration, notice the attitude, a spirit of gentleness, and notice the warning, keep watch on yourself. This is the practical application of Matthew 7. It's removing the speck from your brother's eye after you've taken the log out of your own. It's done with humility, gentleness, and a deep desire for the other person's good. So we have these two categories. On one hand, there is a forbidden judgment that is hypocritical, proud, and condemnatory. On the other hand, there is a required judgment that is discerning, protective, and restorative. How can we tell the difference? How do we know if we are operating in one or the other? The difference isn't in the act of evaluation itself. The difference is in the heart. It all comes down to motive and goal. Before you speak a word of correction or make a judgment about someone's actions or beliefs, you have to do a serious heart check. You have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is it to make myself feel better? Is it because their sin makes me feel more righteous in comparison? Is it because I want to win an argument and prove I'm right? Is it because I enjoy the drama of calling someone out? Is it because I'm just annoyed by them? If any of those are the real motive, then you need to stop. That's the log in your own eye. That is self-righteous, forbidden judgment. But if the motive is genuine love, then you might be on the right track. Is it because you truly care about this person and you see them heading down a path that will harm them and others? Is it because you love God and you are grieved to see his name dishonored by someone who claims to follow him? Is it because you love the church and you want to protect it from false teaching or destructive behavior? Is your heart broken over the situation, not angry or gleeful? A right motive is rooted in love for God and love for your neighbor. And what is the goal? The goal of forbidden judgment is to condemn, to push someone away, to establish your own superiority. The goal is to end the conversation, not to start a process of healing. The goal of righteous judgment or discernment is always restoration. The goal is to see the person restored to a right relationship with God and with others. The goal is to protect the flock. The goal is to uphold the truth in a loving way. It's about building up, not tearing down. It's about healing, not hurting. Even in the extreme case of church discipline in 1 Corinthians 5, the ultimate goal was the salvation of the man's spirit. This means that how we go about it matters just as much as why we do it. Righteous judgment is not done on a social media post for everyone to see. It's not shouted across a room. It's not gossiped about to others. Jesus lays out a process in Matthew 18. If a brother sins against you, you go to them privately first. You keep it small. You keep it humble. You do it with a spirit of gentleness. You don't go in with accusations blazing. You go with questions. Hey, I saw this and it concerned me. Can you help me understand? Or I care about you and I'm worried about this pattern I'm seeing. Are you doing okay? It's a conversation between two broken people who both need Jesus. You are not the Holy One confronting the sinner. You are one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. That has to be the posture of our hearts. A deep, abiding humility. A constant awareness of the log in our own eye. We must always remember that we too are saved only by the grace of God. Any strength we have to stand for what is right is a gift from Him, not something we achieved on our own. Without that humility, even a correct judgment becomes a self-righteous act of pride. So, is it okay for Christians to judge others if by judge you mean condemn? Look down on people with self-righteous superiority, act as if you are God, or make pronouncements based on superficial externals? Then the answer is an emphatic no. That is a serious sin that Jesus warns us about in the strongest possible terms. It invites the same judgment from God, and it proves we have a log in our own eye. But if by a judge you mean to discern, to evaluate, to use the wisdom God has given you to distinguish between right and wrong, truth and error, health and harm. If you mean holding your brothers and sisters in the church accountable in a spirit of gentleness and with the goal of restoration. If you mean protecting the church from those who would seek to harm it, then yes, that kind of judging with right judgment is not only okay, it is a necessary part of Christian love and responsibility. It's a fine line to walk. Our hearts are naturally inclined toward the wrong kind of judgment. We love to feel right. We love to compare ourselves to others. It's so much easier to focus on the speck in someone else's eye than to do the painful work of dealing with the log in our own. That's why our default position should always be one of grace and mercy. We should be quick to listen and slow to speak. We should give people the benefit of the doubt. We should be far more concerned with our own sin than anyone else's. 99% of our judging energy should be directed inward, at our own hearts, our own motives, our own actions. But in those rare moments when we are called to speak up, when love requires us to say something hard, we must do it with fear and trembling. We must do it after a time of intense prayer and self-examination. We must do it with a heart full of love, not anger. We must do it with the gentle hands of a restorer, not the pointing finger of an accuser. In the end, this whole question pushes us back to the two greatest commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Forbidden judgment violates both of these. It puts ourselves in the place of God, and it fails to love our neighbor. Righteous judgment, done correctly, fulfills them. It honors God's truth, and it seeks the absolute best for our neighbor, which is their restoration and flourishing in Christ. It is an act of love, and that should be the standard by which all our actions and all our judgments are measured.